welcome back to another fun and exciting episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod.
And I am Bryce.
You know, it's good to have you here today. It's good to be here with you today.
I was about to say, it's good to have you in my house.
Okay, fair enough. Well, you know...
This is my house.
Well, thanks for the invite. How about that? Is that
I
a better
didn't
way?
invite you.
Oh, well, yeah, you did.
I invited my guest.
Okay, fair enough. All right, well, you know, I'm glad we have with us somebody that we've been wanting to have for a long while. We have with us a very fantastic guest. His name is Darrell Terry, and he is a police officer here with our school district that Bryce and I work with, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
To visit with us about issues that I think are extremely important. One dealing with race, the other dealing with the police culture or the anti-police culture that seems to be very prevalent. So we're going to kind of dive right in. So tell us a little bit about you, where you came from, all that kind of stuff.
Good stuff, man. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you guys for having me.
Of course.
Somewhat like a celebrity, even though
Well, you
I'm
are a
not.
celebrity.
Well, maybe in the school world.
Okay.
It's a little weird.
Well, that's only where we live, so.
That's
Well,
true.
hey, now it's going to be real. It's you're on the podcast, so
I know. I'm about to be signing autographs and
You
taking
will.
pictures.
All 10 to 12 listeners.
we've got 20 now.
Oh, okay.
Hey.
Woo, we're stepping up.
Moving up. Now, it's weird because I was Christmas shopping a little while ago. And, of course, you know, we're moving to Salina from McKinney. But we were out and we were doing a lot of shopping in Prosper. So every time we get to a store, we get to like Home Goods or Walmart or, you know, those stores. I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, I'm going to wait in the car because I'm going to see too many people I know. And we're going to have to, you know, stop and chat. She's like, why are you acting like a celebrity? I was like, oh. I was like, I am a celebrity in Prosper. Don't get it twisted now.
You're going to have to wear glasses and a hat.
Exactly.
Wait a minute. He is wearing a hat, though.
Yeah,
That's true. But the glasses.
with the glasses.
Okay. Well, and then the mask.
True.
True.
So,
But the height don't. I mean, I'm 6'5". I'm a black man, so it's kind of hard to hide the obvious. But a little bit about me, man. Again, my name's Darrell Terry. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Big hoots to the Bears and the Bulls and the White Sox and the Cubs and all those other Chicago teams, man. But my family and I, we moved down to Texas about 7 years ago. So my whole life being my adulthood, my childhood, it was all Chicago. I mean, all I know is Chicago. So moving to Texas was a big deal for my family and I. Chicago was getting a little crazy. It was getting hectic. And at that time we had young girls, young kids, and we knew that we wanted something different for them. We didn't know what different looked like at the time, but we know we wanted something that looks different than the lives that we grew up in and the times that we grew up in Chicago. So, like I say, living in Chicago my whole life, I just kind of seen the good side of Chicago, the bad side of Chicago. And don't take what I'm saying as Chicago's a bad place. I mean, it's one of the greatest cities, I think, in the entire world. The culture, the people, the food, the sports. It's a great city. But for myself, I lived in Chicago. I lived in the inner city of Chicago. So where I grew up, grew up with my grandparents. Middle class household. It was really nice. My granddad worked. He was a foreman for General Motors. So he provided for the family real well. And, you know, we grew up we grew up with the things that we wanted. So I didn't go without. But again, we're talking about in the 80s and like the early 90s in Chicago, and the area that we lived in, it was really nice. But again, time evolves and things change. So I watched the neighborhood that I grew up in change over the years, and the people that stayed there moved out. Like when my grandparents bought the house, I mean, we lived across the street from one of the biggest hair care product developers in the world. Doctors, lawyers, even, you know, the mayor used to live on our block. So it was really nice growing up, you know, in that era in the 80s and the 90s. But the early 2000s, maybe the late 90s, it changed, and the gangs moved in, the drugs moved in. So I can remember going to high school and, I would cross through maybe 6 or 7 different gangs. And, they didn't mess with me because they knew, hey, I played ball growing up. Reference to me being 6'5". Tall and athletic. I didn't model. I know y'all looking at me like, well, you're pretty handsome. You didn't model? I didn't model.
Oh.
So I hooped. So, the gang bangers and the drug dealers, they left me alone, for the most part, because they understood, hey, this guy, and that was the good thing about Chicago at the time. They respected, you for who you was, and they really didn't mess with you. So I didn't really have any issues with, gangs or drugs, but I went through that and I walked through that. I mean, it was times in Chicago where, I'll be going to school or leaving practice, and practice got out pretty late, say 7 o'clock, and it's already dark. So again, walking home maybe 2.5 miles back to my house. I mean, it was shootings. I mean, you seen guys getting beat up, and, I thought then when I was 16, 17 years old, going through that, like, man, is this how it's going to be here? And, I someday want a family, and hopefully, they don't have to go through this. So, fast forward, man, living on the South Side with my daughters, and I think they were at volleyball practice one day. Well, a certain day that we actually decided to move to Texas. And I was in the kitchen. I was making me a sandwich. We lived in a pretty good neighborhood. It was pretty diverse. It's Hyde Park. It's where the University of Chicago is, and the museums and the lakefront. So it's just a pretty nice area. But Chicago is blocks. So you have good blocks, you have bad blocks. And I thought we had a good block. So on our block, it was pretty good. It was pretty diverse. And the wife had left and took the girls to volleyball practice, and I was making my sandwich in the kitchen, and I heard about 4 gunshots, like really, really close. It sounded like they were in my backyard. And I was just thinking to myself, as I dove on the floor and, took cover because I didn't know where those shots was coming from. And at that moment, I was kind of like, wow, it's time to go. It's time to move my kids.
That's pretty scary.
It's very scary, and it's surreal, Of course, me growing up there, I heard the gunshots, I can't say that all my friends were Sunday school boys that, So, a lot of my friends, they did partake in a lot of the, activities outside of, basketball, and, some sold drugs and some toted guns. That was kind of the lifestyle that they choose. So, again, I knew at a young age that wasn't the life that I wanted to live. So that moment in my house when I heard those gunshots, when my wife returned home, I told her what happened. And she said, because we always talked about relocating. We just didn't figure out. We didn't know where. But she was like, all right, let's do it. She was like, it's time. And she said, where do you want to go? And it was weird because we didn't have any plans. We didn't have anything in motion. We just knew we were ready to leave Chicago. So my background is in hospitality, hotel management. That's kind of where I got my start. I got a love for people, man. I love people, interacting with people, making people smile. So I worked in hospitality at the time. At the time. Then I went to the sheriff department up in Chicago. We'll get to that at some point. But with my background and my work experience, I knew I can work anywhere in any city, pretty much any country. I mean, there's hotels everywhere. There's police everywhere. So I said, hey, she got home that day. I said, here's a map. Look at the map and pick where you want to go. And that's kind of how we looked. That's how we did it. We looked at California, Florida, Arizona. We looked at all these warm weather states. We ain't going nowhere cold with snow and ice.
Amen. Amen.
So, so God, and I'm a religious guy. I believe in God and that whole thing, man. So we prayed on it. We prayed about it. And luckily God answered our prayers, and he actually provided a job opportunity for my wife here in Texas. And prior to her, taking that job offer, I'd never been to Texas, never visited Texas. I just thought Texas was big belt buckles,
Cowboy hats,
and cowboy boots, and people riding horses in the streets. So I was like, okay, I can do it. I guess it's gonna be a little different than the South Side of Chicago, but hey, I'm down for it. So wifey came down. She pretty much got us established. She was here. She started her job a few months before we got here. Found us a place to live. We moved down here, and that was almost 8 years ago. So here we are.
Yay.
Good times.
Do you think, now you said you were raised by your grandparents. First of all, do you have siblings?
I do. So I have, it's a lot of us. It's 5 of us. I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. So I have a younger brother and 2 younger sisters.
Okay.
Yep.
And y'all lived with your grandparents?
What's kind of weird, I did as the oldest. So me and my younger brother, we lived with my grandparents. My mom relocated to Memphis, Tennessee when I was 14 to take care of her grandmother, who was sick at the time. So we thought, hey, you're gonna go down there, you're gonna come back, and you'll be back in 2 years. 2 years turned into forever. So she never came back.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was hard. That was a hard pill to swallow, because she got down there, she kind of reestablished her life down there. Met a guy that she fell in love with, and they had kids, and that's how my sisters, my 2 younger sisters, became.
Got it.
So they were in Memphis. So no, they didn't live with us in Chicago. But so my younger brother and I, we pretty much grew up with our grandparents in Chicago.
How was that being raised by grandparents?
It's different, and I always talk about this with my kids. Grandparents, I like to say they've been around the block, So at that time, my grandparents, they were older, and they were kind of, I want to say, tired, raising their own 6 kids.
Right. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was 6 of them. So when we came along, because a little bit backstory on that too, both my parents were addicted to drugs. And I tell my story to my students so that they don't use what they handicaps in their life as a crutch. And you can make it out of any circumstances or any situation if you put your mind to it. And I could have used that as a crutch, as a means to, going in the street selling drugs and doing all these other things. Because again, what people say, well, you don't have parents, you don't have a dad that's there, you don't have your mom there. So those times were challenging, but again, my grandparents stepped up to the plate, but at the same time, they were older, and they didn't get out as much. So it was tough on us because as an athlete and playing basketball, I didn't really have the support that I needed to pursue my basketball goals.
Right.
Like ever since I can remember, since I was 2 or 3 years old, I wanted to be in the NBA. That was my dream. I thought I was going to make the NBA, and everybody around me thought I was going to make the NBA. Because I was really good. And I think in my 8th grade year, I kind of tore my MCL, messed my ankles up. Yeah, like I used to, because in Chicago, you play on concrete, and it's tough and it wears on your body. But again, being raised by my grandparents, they were old school. They was like, hey, go lay down. That's your knee gonna stop hurting.
Right.
Like, nah, this is a different type of pain. Like, nah, you gonna be okay. So they didn't take us, to the doctors and, to these special, people that look at these special things when you get hurt. So I had issues with my knees for years and never got it looked at. And same thing with my ankles. So those were the challenges that I kind of dealt with my grandparents, just them not being, they were great people. They provided, food and shelter and all those great things and love. But there was some pieces that was missing that I think could have got myself and my brother to the next level that I wanted to be at. And really that was just hooping. So, but them being older, man, that was a little bit of our challenge, not being able to get around, travel, and do stuff like that with them. But outside of that, man, she made a mean baked chicken and some great macaroni and
Ooh, that
cheese.
does sound good.
So Sunday dinners was always great. But it was a good time.
Now, did your grandparents, they grow up in Chicago as well?
Yep, grew up in Chicago. Originally, our family is from Mississippi. So born and raised, my grandparents were both born and raised in Mississippi, came to Chicago, I believe, in I don't want to say they old, but I think the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, early 60s. Came to Chicago and kind of established themselves there. So, we do have family that's, back home in Mississippi. And
So they grew up in a segregated South.
they did.
And then they were young people during the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Did they share stories about that?
And that's another component that we miss too, because with so much knowledge, I think that they had, like growing up in those times, they didn't really share a whole lot of it, with us. And I think that's where we lack too, because again, they grew up in those times, but those conversations wasn't had. They wasn't had, but they talked a little bit about, they were old school. And I don't want to say they were kind of, I don't want to say racist, but, they didn't mind white people. But they always told us, hey, don't you bring home the white girl in this house. And don't you bring home, a white boy here. And, I never understood where that came from. Because where we lived at in Chicago, it wasn't diverse at all. It was all black. I didn't get my taste of diversity until my first job when I started working at hotels downtown Chicago. Because then where we lived, we didn't travel. Like I said, my grandparents, they didn't get out much. So we didn't travel outside of our city limits. So, it wasn't until I was 20, 21 years old when I really started intermingling with, white people. But I never had an issue with white people. Because, of course, you see them on TV and, you read books and those types of things. But to be face-to-face and, actually have conversations, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s, late teens. So they didn't really have those conversations. I think a part of that probably was because they did grow up in such a segregated era in time where, maybe it was something that was hard for them to talk about. Or maybe they felt like, hey, we didn't moved on from this and we're in better times now. And they felt the need wasn't there to talk to us about it, I'm assuming.
They ever explained to you why they didn't want you to bring a non-black friend or girlfriend home?
Honestly, they didn't. But they'll make little references like, hey, you'll get caught up or, so I'm sure you guys are familiar with Emmett Till. Are you familiar with the Emmett Till situation? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they kind of talk, to that a little bit about, Emmett Till and how he was out with this white girl apparently and he was at the store and,
they string him up and they execute him because a black kid was supposedly whistled at a white girl.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just off of little things like that, I think was their MO for not wanting us to, date or associate with certain white people or, at that time. To me, I was kind of like, well, I didn't live in that time and I think white girls are cute. So don't put that on us. Huh. But, I think that those were hard times for them. And I don't think they really knew how to express or communicate that with us at the time. So the only way to do it or put it was to say, hey, don't bring that white girl or that white boy home.
Right.
So
I think some of that has to be generational because my parents, they grew up in Kansas and Missouri, but they, growing up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, they got married and started having a family early 60s. And they had some of those very same mindsets that it's okay to have as friends, but you don't date outside your own race.
Right.
But you're right. We kind of grew up in the aftermath of the civil rights era where everybody was commingled together and it was, we were, I don't know, I feel like I was kind of raised to not judge a person by how they look, but instead judge them by how they act.
Right.
And so but then when we get to be, of dating age, well, then suddenly these restrictions started to show up and it's kind of like, no, wait a minute. Isn't that a little bit of hypocrisy?
I agree with you. And, for me, and luckily, growing up, man, even though they were old school, once we did get in our 20s, man, they were kind of open minded to whoever we brought home, whoever we dated. They supported us and they supported, who we love and who we loved and who we wanted to be with. Because like I said, I went to high school in Chicago. I did my college in Chicago, went to JUCO, and I went to Chicago State for a little bit. So as an athlete, I dated a lot of girls. Girls like me, so I mean,
a tall, handsome man.
That model, right?
That's athletic.
Everything a girl wants.
Bryce has some experience with that. I was not the athletic type.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. I love the way you have those rose-colored glasses on. I have a body for science fiction more than anything.
Jeez.
Anyway, sorry. Well, do you think... All right, so to move forward a little bit, based on how you were raised, all right, with the interesting family dynamics, the location, the big gap between your age, your grandparents' age, different time periods, how does that influence, or how has that influenced how you have been raising your children?
I mean, me raising my kids, I think, was pivotal for me in the way that I was raised. Again, was I raised with love and affection? I was raised with love, but there wasn't a whole lot of affection there. I didn't get hugs on a daily, and I didn't get told I love you, even though I'm sure they did love me because they provided me a place to stay and they gave me all these awesome things, but things doesn't equate to love. So the way I raise my kiddos now, it's a little bit different. I explain to them, what love is and what loves look like, and how to cherish a person and how to be you. Because to me, I think where I lacked in my life was the lack there of support. And when I say support, I mean support in my relationships, support in my spiritual walk with God, support in, my career findings. All those things was lacking in my life when I was growing up. So I make it a point to be there for my girls now and to support their dreams, their goals, their walk with God. Because, I mean, in the world we live in now, man, everything is pretty much fixated on social media and what you see, on your phone and what you see on your computer screen. And what they seeing now, they believe in it. When my daughter was 13 and she don't even have any social media, but her friends have it. And my daughter's 5'6", she's like 110 pounds. Well, I mean, she's beautiful. But when she was 13, this was last year, she came home and she was just like, Dad, why don't I have, green eyes? And, why isn't my skin tone this color? And I said, well, where are you getting that from? She was like, hey, my friend was going through Snapchat and I saw all these other girls and this is what they look like. And, I had to confirm with her and let her know, well, God made you the way he made you. He made you with brown skin and, brown eyes and, big feet. That's how he made you. He didn't make you like those other girls, man. So just reassuring them and their walk in life and just making sure that I'm there and I'm present. Again, I didn't have my father. I had my mom for a little bit, but I didn't have my dad. So I know what that meant to me. I know what he missed out on and I know what I missed out on. There's only so much that you can get from your grandparents. And it's only so much you can get from your mom. Your mom can tell you some things, and she can be pretty much head on and straight on, with the girl stuff and the wife stuff. But there are some things that a dad being involved in his kid's life that you can't measure up against anything else. So being present right now is key. And that's kind of the reasons why I took the job in Prosper and I work in Prosper and I work for the school district. It's because I wanted to be present in my girls' lives, meaning not missing sports activities. Both my girls combined, they in like 7 choirs. They like Texas choir. They in every choir you can name. I was just like, geez, how many more choirs But they can never say that I missed the choir performance or Dad missed a volleyball game. I make every practice pretty much. You know, that's how involved I want to be because, and my wife always tells me, she said, you don't have to go to that. You don't have to do that. You can stay home for this. It's only practice. But I feel like because that was one of the missing voids in my life, I was like, and I wanted that. I was like, even though they don't say it, I think that's my girls, they will want that. Because when they get older, they can always say, my dad was there. And hey, I look over, because every time they do something right, they look over, they looking at dad like, okay, thumbs up, thumbs down. So, you know, they looking for that approval. Even when I'm critiquing them, you know, they make like, I don't want to hear it, or I don't want to hear that. But then, you know, next week it's like, Dad, did you see that open hand I hit and end up getting that score? Absolutely, I did. Even though you told me you didn't want to do that, you did it anyway.
Right.
So, just being pivotal in my girls' lives right now, and you know, being a support system that they need.
Right. I think that's. I'm just back here listening.
Doing your bobblehead thing.
Doing my bobblehead thing. And enjoying listening to you. And I think that's what a lot of kids are missing. A parent that's present.
Yes.
And you could be there, but a lot of people are on their phones or on the computer, or they're taking a work call, but they're not actually present. They're not where their feet are with their kids. And so I see that a lot, and I've fallen into that too a few times. I'm not going to lie about it, but you know, that's just something that as a dad, as the privilege of being a father, is be present, because they're going to turn around like, my dad was there.
Yes.
Every corner he was there.
Yes.
So I think that's huge. That's
in my
huge.
psychology classes, they talk about, or in some of the stuff I've had anyway, they talk frequently about how even if our children aren't actively observing us, they are passively observing how we as parents are acting, because when they become adults, they're going to that becomes a default setting on how to act, how to behave. And when they become parents themselves, I mean, I think about how I parented with Eric, how I parent with my stepkids. I do and say a lot of the same things that my parents said and did. Yeah. And it's kind of like, I hated it then, but now that roles are reversed, I better understand it.
Yes.
So how did that make you feel? And did you talk with your wife when your 13-year-old comes home and says, why don't I look like that?
Well, it made me feel, I mean, because I always, you know, reassured her, and like I always tell her, I'm her biggest cheerleader. You know, I'm her biggest supporter. So I tell her she's beautiful, and you know, I tell her that, you know, she's one of the best athletes I've seen play the game of volleyball, and one of the best singers. So for me, I tell her not to look for validation in social media or other people. You don't need nobody to validate who you are. You're validated already at home. You're already validated through God. So who else? Can't no boy tell you you're not pretty, or can't nobody tell you are pretty. You know who you are. You know what your standards are. You know what your beliefs are. So those are the conversations that we have with our kiddos, because I think more than now, that's when they need it. I mean, the world we live in now is, it's to me, I call it fake. You know, it's fake. It's not real, because everybody put on social media what they want you to see. Nobody's going to wake up with crust in their eyes and, you know,
having that bad hair day look.
And post that picture on Snapchat or TikTok. No. So, of course, once they get glammed up and they got the fake eyelashes on, they got the fake hair, they got the makeup. Who is this person? Like, you can look at a person in this picture and you say, okay, go swimming now, and post that same picture.
Right.
And you're going to be like, who is that?
Uh-huh.
You know, so, I you know, we just tell them, hey, man, you know, people put out what they want you to see. But God sees you as who you are. That's with makeup. That's without makeup. That's with short hair, long hair. He loves you for who you are. We love you for who you are through your mistakes. And she's a teenager, and she's been making lots and lots of mistakes lately.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I think that when we're that age, and I am finding I am becoming that bitter old man that would yell, "Get off my lawn." But I have to, as soon as I do something I go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe those words popped into my mind, let alone came out of my mouth. And I go, wait a minute. I need to go back in time and remember what I was like. I was a screwball kid. I remember going into convenience stores and being watched like a hawk because it was me and a buddy of mine, and you're 13 years old, you're 14 years old, and you're walking around the aisles and you're picking up candy and you're, doing these kinds of things, and they're looking at you like you're going to be shoplifting. So we've got 9 and 1 already pushed on the phone, ready to go here. How do you talk to your kids about that? Well, and this is for both of you guys. How do you talk to your kids about, understand that because of your age, you're going to, you go in, you're hanging out with your friends, you're at a store, people are going to look at you with suspicion already, and then throw in, okay, does your son as a white kid get treated differently than maybe your daughter as a black girl get treated? Do they get treated the same, looked at the same, or are they looked at differently?
Well, I can speak for me and, my household and my family. Like you stated earlier, I've been in similar situations where I go in the store and I'm followed and, looked at, because again, I look somewhat, I guess you can say, intimidating because I'm 6'5", a black man, so it's not until you get to know who I really am before you can say, okay, well, he's just really a gentle giant, he's a big teddy bear. But in certain situations, man, because there are Karens out here that, I teach my kids, treat everybody with kindness. Because I think now, man, the respect for authority has really dwindled, and it's not really there anymore, man. And honestly, and I could be wrong, and it's just my opinion, but I think everything starts at home. It starts with parenting, and that goes for police, teachers, your doctor, everybody. So if you're not teaching these things to your kids at home, how to respect authority and people, then I think we're gonna have some issues. And one of the biggest issues I see in my line of work is the lack thereof of respect for authority. And I tell our students, and that's why I thank Rod all the time for giving us that platform to speak to our kids, to let them know the do's and the don'ts. And when you get pulled over by the police, or you at a house party and police show up, what you could do and what you can't do, because you don't win those battles on the side of the road. I don't care how right you think you are, in that moment you're not going to be right. So it's a learning tool, and it's a learning curve for you to say, okay, let me take this. Figure out what he's talking about. If I made a mistake, or if I didn't use my turn signal, you can't fight that on the side of the road. You get that officer's information, and you take it to his superior, and that's how you fight those things. Because we just seen it, over and over again, man. Where you try to fight those battles on the side of the road, and what happens? A lot of times you end up in jail, or sometimes you end up dead or shot or hurt, by trying to fight those things there. But man, I just tell my daughter, and I teach her, hey, if you ever in one of those situations, man, and I'm a big killing with kindness type of person, killing with kindness, hey,
pisses people off a lot of times.
It does, just wave at them, and I'm learning this, and I have to practice what I preach most of the times, because man, I had road rage really, really bad. In Chicago I didn't have it really bad, but I moved to Texas because most Texans can't drive.
Yeah, I don't even know what that's like, road rage.
Again, if you want a thriller of a ride, get in the truck with Rod.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
if you have time, go. Yeah, after this episode, go get in the truck with Rod.
I'm telling you, that is part of my 2022 McCall improvement plan, is to not be as frustrated at people who drive like crap.
I'm with you on that,
I mean, personally, I need a cattle guard. I want a 1976 Ford or Chevy station wagon, the type we used to use when they had demo derbies. And I'm going to, you don't want to go through the light. I'm going to drive your car through the light. You want to text on your phone? Fine. I will guide you into the drive or into the yard of somebody's house so you can have plenty of time. And if you don't want to go the speed limit, then I will push you to go the speed limit. I mean, I can absolutely be. Never mind. Again, we went off on a tangent again.
I know this might sound hard to believe, but I have been pulled over a couple times.
No.
Okay. Coming from California, being a
surfer dude,
a skater dude, and thought I was all that, right?
Yeah.
And when I've looked back, I've found myself, my attitude towards the police when I've been pulled over, most of the time has earned me a ticket or it's earned me a seat on the curb.
Right.
I know it's a little hard because I'm a good Christian boy, right?
We even had your mom on once.
I know.
Talking about how good you are.
But there was one time where it was Officer Watson.
Oh.
She was in a class one time and said something about, your attitude towards the police, right? And because we're talking about the respect, and I totally agree with you, 1,000%.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, yeah, I've earned tickets because of my attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one time, Braddock's was in the truck with me, and I rolled the stop sign, and it was a neighborhood, and there was police sitting right there, and she pulled me over.
Yeah.
I think she was a rookie maybe, and because she was with someone.
Yeah.
And she got out, and Braddock's like, Dad, no, and he was probably like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's all right.
Okay.
I was in the wrong.
Yeah.
He's like, well, what are you going to do? I'm going to get a ticket.
Yeah.
And so I had my windows down already, and I turned my truck off. She said, do you know why I pulled you right? Yeah, absolutely. I ran that stop sign.
Good deal.
And she says, yeah, okay. She went back to her vehicle, came back, and she's like, I'm going to give you a warning, to make sure you come to a complete stop, especially in the neighborhood. Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you, And completely different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to do this anyways because I'm a different person nowadays.
Okay.
But I'm going to, especially, this is a moment to teach Braddock's.
Yes.
You're going to respect authority.
Yes.
And you're going to have a positive attitude. And if you're in the wrong, you're in the wrong. You need to own it.
Yes, it.
And so when you were talking about that, I was reflecting on that because like I said, I've had a lot of experience where my attitude is enemy in hot water.
I agree.
The number of times that, again, this year, walking the hallways is something that they're asking us teachers to do. And so, that's what we do. We all have different times. And, you're just walking the halls. I mean, most of the time, you're not even looking. You're just trying to, usher kids back to the classroom.
Yep.
And the kids that go, oh, I'm sorry, you know what? Yes, thank you. I'm on my way back to class. Thank you. We were just goofing. We were just talking. Okay, we're done talking. Thank you very much. Hey, all I'm asking you is to go back to class. But you start giving me lip. You start giving me attitude. Mm-hmm. And thinking that, well, as one said, well, I'm just like you. I'm a man. And part of me goes, I'm sorry, you're 15 with an attitude the size of Texas. You need to scale it down. We need to deflate, your head a little, because we aren't the same. I'm not your bro, and you're not a man, not with that attitude.
Right.
And that led to an escalation, and the kid got himself into some real trouble.
Yeah.
When all you're being asked is, how are you? Where are you headed? Mm-hmm. What you doing? What class are you in? Well, what's your name?
That's it. And and I agree with both of you guys, man. And, that's what I kind of tell my kiddos too, because teachable moments are not always taught from textbooks or, we're having to say something or talk directly to a person about how to learn something. It's him watching you and how you interacted on that traffic stop. That was a teachable moment. So he looked back and he just observed you and said, okay, what are you going to do? I'm watching. All right. So when I get older, I know how to handle my traffic stop. So if you would have blew up, you're like, no, you blow up on traffic stops. And this is how you talk to police. Mm-hmm. So I tell my kids the same thing, it's all teachable moments, and I've been pulled over plenty of times in my life. And, recently in Texas, it was probably 2 years ago, I got pulled over. And I was police at the time. And we were coming from Tennessee, visiting my sisters down there in Memphis. And it's like 2 in the morning. And we were driving back. We were on 380. And
Was this the one in Princeton?
yeah, that's the one in Princeton.
Okay.
So again, yeah, pulled over.
Sorry, I apologize. When Officer Terry comes to talk to the kids in class, he shares different stories.
got
So
it.
I've been lucky enough to hear this story a couple times.
Well,
So
don't
go
ruin
ahead,
it.
tell it.
Yeah, so I'll give the quick short version of it. We're driving home from Tennessee. It's 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not a bunch of cars on the roadway, so it's me and maybe 2 other cars. So we notice this car in front of us. He's kind of zigzagging through the lines, not really keeping a steady hand on the steering wheel. So I'm thinking, hey, this guy may be somewhat impaired. It's Saturday morning. He probably came from the bar, he had too many drinks. Let's keep the roadways safe. Hey, babe, call the police. So she calls the police. She gets on the phone with the 911 operator, and she kind of explains what we got, what we see, and what we're observing. So the dispatcher's like, absolutely, we'll send an officer out to investigate and hopefully catch that car. So we're like, hey, we right behind it. So when the officer get here, we can tell you exactly what it looks like, where he's at. We actually we got our flashes on, and it's the vehicle in front of us. So about 2 minutes go along. My wife is still on the phone with the operator. So we're like, hey, we see a police car coming. So she's like, all right, you guys can hang up. They'll take it from there. We're like, cool. We did our duty. We about to make this arrest happen. About to get a DUI off the street. We saving the world.
Oh.
So we see the police car. He comes. He passes us, and he flips around. We're like, oh yeah, he about to do it. Turns his lights on, and we're like, all right, got his lights on, and he's still behind us with his lights on. I'm like, all right,
no.
all right, go around. Like he's in front of us. No, he was pulling us over.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? So we pull over. He comes up and he says, hey, I'm officer such and such with this specific city that we were in. And I say, okay, hey, what's the reason for the stop? He said, well, I pulled you over because you were speeding.
Oh,
And at that time, again, teachable moment.
Right.
So you didn't, I was hot. And I wanted to go off the handle, but I know I had my daughters in the car with me. I had my wife, and they all looking at me like, all right, Dad, what you going to do? Yeah.
you can handle this one.
Right. So I was polite, and I was just say, okay. So he's like, give me your license, registration, and all that stuff, the insurance. So I said, here you go. So I was polite. I didn't tell them I was police. I didn't pull my badge and all that good stuff like most people do to me when I pull them over and they police. They just throw their badge in my face like, ha, here you go.
Right.
I'm like, nah, that don't work that way. Still gonna take it, buddy. Sorry.
That's a nice shiny badge. Too bad.
Exactly. I'll take that back.
Well, looks like mine.
Exactly. So I give them all my information at that time. Then I let them know that I am police because I'm carrying at the time. So I let them know, hey, I do have my. And then, oh, you're police? Yeah, I'm police. So I said, well, we had called in, a DWI that was in front of us. He said, yeah, I was actually headed to that and noticed you guys speeding. So I mean, again, it's 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't, I work patrol and I know how it is, man. When it's almost time to get off work and you're ready to go home, you probably had a long night. DWIs take forever. I mean, it's not a quick process. It's more like a 4 or 5 hour process.
Wow.
Yeah, because you got to do the test. You got to get blood. I mean, tow, arrest, and the report is so detailed.
Oh.
So I think in his head, he was like, I'm not doing that tonight.
Right. I'm gonna take the easy one.
Take the easy one. So when he found out I was police, he was like, all right, I'm sorry, here's everything back, I'm gonna see if I can go catch up to this DWI that you guys called in. Dude, that was 10 minutes ago.
Oh.
He's gone.
He's at home.
He's at home. But circle back, just being teachable. Talk about teachable moments. Just being teachable and showing that respect. Even though I was upset and I was hot because I was thinking we let this DWI, this person that was possibly intoxicated, go. And who knows, maybe 2 miles up the road, this guy smashes into a family that's driving home from a family vacation. And it was a teachable moment for my kids. I just said, sometimes, you win some, sometimes you lose some. But, hopefully, we pray for the people that was driving on that roadway, got home safely. And that person that was driving, hopefully they wasn't under the influence, and maybe they were just looking down, texting on their phone, and swerved the line a couple times and made it home safely as well. So it was a good moment. It was a good teaching moment.
That's good. Yeah.
This has been a whole lot of fun. Would you mind coming back for us to do another episode? We'd like to keep talking. Yeah, would you mind?
Can you come on back, please? We love it.
Sure, y'all can get this hands on face one more time.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this quits. Thank you, Terry, for being here.
Yes, thank you.
We'll go Officer Terry, make it more official.
Celebrity.
Yes.
Terry
Yes. Maybe it's a good thing we're radio instead of video, but
right.
I don't know. I've been told I have a face for radio, so maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. Hey, anyway, we're going to call it quits. I'm Rod.
And I'm Bryce.
Until next time.